So welcome back. This will be our fourth lesson. Compare and order rational numbers. Again, this time we're going to be comparing fractions because again, fractions are a type of rational number. Again, our strategy again is going to be to use the LCD, which again stands for the least common denominator. That's going to be our best strategy. And don't forget our symbols here, less than, greater than, equal to. So we want to compare a -7/8 to a 6/8. So again, I can use the number line to model this, and since our denominators are already the same, we don't have to do that. So 6/8, I can count by eighths. So there's 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, 8/8. So 6/8 would be located, looks like about here. 5/8, 6/8 would be here. There's my 6/8. And note also, 8/8 is the same thing as 1/2. So it's still under 1. On this side, we have -1/8, -2/8, -3/8, -4/8, -5/8, -6/8. There's -7/8 over here. And then there's our -8/8, which is the same thing as -1. And we can kind of see when you're comparing negative numbers to positive numbers, it's pretty clear that a positive number is more to the right than a negative number because you're moving to the right of 0 while a negative number is moving left of 0. So positive numbers will always be greater than negative numbers, so we know this is going to be a less than. And again, you can kind of model that clearly to prove that to yourself by looking at the actual model. Number 2, we have -3/8 compared to -5/16. Notice how we don't have the same denominator. So if I look at my denominators, I've got 8 and 16 over here, and when I do common denominators, what I'm using is the multiples of each number. Notice though the next multiple of 8 is actually 16, and I've already had a common denominator in one move there. So I know that my new fraction then has to be then this 16. So that's going to be my new denominator. So I'm going to kind of squeeze this in here. I'm going to change that to 16. But notice to change that to 16, that 8 had to be renamed. Since it took 2 8s to get a 16, what I'm doing is multiplying that 8 by 2. But to keep the equivalent, I still got to multiply that numerator by 2. So -3 times 2 would give me a -6 there. And how is that going to compare then? Notice I don't have to change the denominator here, it's already got one, -5/16. So what you're really comparing is -6/16 to a -5/16. So my number line is going by 16ths. So here's my 0. And since I'm going in a negative direction, I put my 0 over here. I needed more room on my number line since it's all negative. So -1/16, -2/16, -3/16, -4/16, -5/16 is here. And -6/16 would be here. And then there's your -7/16, -8/16, so forth and so on. Again, notice that -6/16 is the same thing as a -1. Again, if you're comparing negative numbers, the one that's to the right has always got more value. So that's just like in debt. The smaller your negative value, the less debt you are, which means you have more value. So more right is a bigger value. So he's the larger one. So that means that this is smaller, this is bigger, so I use a less than symbol. So remember, it's like an alligator mouth. It's always going to eat the bigger value. So it's going to eat the -5/16 since it's to the right. So looking at this example, we have 9/16 compared to -12/16. Notice again how this is a positive number and this is a negative number. So we kind of pick up on this that positive numbers are always bigger than negative numbers. So we don't necessarily need to draw a number line once we pick up on that pattern. So 9/16 is greater than a -12/16 because positive values are always bigger than negative values, value-wise. So now, look at this one. Notice that we need a common denominator. So I write my denominators down. My next denominator is a 10, 5, 10. We've got a winner. 10 is a common denominator. So I got to change this -4/5 to have a common denominator. So I change it to a 10, which means I have to multiply the 5 by 2, and to keep it equivalent, I would have to multiply the numerator by 2. That's going to change that to -8/10. So I have negative 8/10 and negative 7/10. So negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, there's negative 5/10, negative 6/10, negative 7/10 is here. And then negative 8/10 would be here. So again, take a note, who is to the right? The negative 7/10 is to the right, so that's the bigger one. So that means the negative 7/10 is greater than the negative 4/5. So in comparing fractions, one of the strategies that we like to implement right now is just getting a common denominator. That helps us with some fractional practices. Okay, stay tuned.